Angels, what are they? Have you ever experienced or encountered one? And what is their purpose for being here? So, on today's episode of the podcast, we're going to discuss angels. Have you seen them? Have you experienced them? Are there people who are actually angels? I believe that there are. So, today's episode, we're going to discuss angels, the different types, what they mean, what their purpose is, and have you seen any? I'm going to share a few experiences that I've also had with angels in my lifetime. So, hi, if you're new here, I'm Jenna. I'm your host of the podcast, and we like to share knowledge over here. So, I'm going to share some personal stories of angel encounters that I've had over my lifetime. So, let's get into it. What is an angel? We've all heard of them, right? We know that angels walk among us. And so I feel like maybe we've had experiences and we don't know in that moment that that's what that is, that we're being visited by an otherworldly entity, an angel. There are several different types of angels. So we're going to go over some of the most common ones. There's about 9 different ones that we're going to cover in this episode. So I hope you'll hang out and stick around till the end. So I have been visited more than a few times by angels. One of the times that I can remember was many, many years ago, and I was in church. Yeah, once upon a time, I actually was a regular at church. Can you believe that? Now she's a little witchy and a little weird, a little woo woo. This is me. This is who I am. My beliefs have evolved over the years that I've been on this planet. And I would imagine that most people's tend to change with how they change and how they grow. So, several years ago, I want to say, let me think about this for a second. I want to say I was probably in my mid 20s at this time. So, I had gone through quite a few things in my life at that point already. I was married. I had at least two of my boys at that point in time. And my husband and I used to attend church together on a pretty regular basis, pretty much every Sunday. Sometimes we'd go Wednesdays as well. And I believe it was a Sunday that we were there. Now, the church that we used to go to was a great church. They were an evangelical Christian church. So if you're unfamiliar with that, their whole purpose is to go out and spread the gospel to people, to get as many people saved or born again into the body of Christ as possible. So that was their mission. The other thing with that church is that they were what's known as an equipping church. So, meaning that we were supposed to discover what our spiritual gifts were, and then we were supposed to use those, right? We all had a divine purpose for actually being here and existing. So the Sunday in question, we it was just an average Sunday. There was nothing special going on. There wasn't anything that really stood out at all. We happened to be in just a regular service that we had attended many times before. The kids were in the nursery. My husband and I were in the sanctuary, and um, if I remember right, the message of the sermon was about how God will come through with confirmation when the message is from God. And so discernment is required when we think that we are talking with spirit, angels, God, Jesus, any sort of otherworld entity. Discernment is always necessary. So, as we're in the middle of praise and worship, I happened to notice somebody out of the corner of my eye, and I glanced over, and it was a woman that I loosely know from Bible study. I can't even remember her name. It's been so many years, but she was a sweet woman. I didn't know her well. We had gone to Bible study maybe 2 or 3 times together, is all I really knew of her. So as I look at her in a split second, I get an instant message in my mind, a thought in my mind, which I now call downloads or intuition. And all I heard was she has cancer. And I was a little taken back by that. I was a little upset at myself. I'm like, why in the world would I think that? What in the world is happening here? Why would I have that thought in my head? She didn't look sick. She didn't look like she was struggling with anything. She looked completely fine to me. So, I was a little upset with what I was thinking. So I told my husband, I said, I just had the weirdest thought. And I told him, I said, I think so and so might have cancer. And he was like, really? And I said, yeah, bizarre, right? I don't know why I would think that. And he said, well, pray about it. Pastor's talking about how um, God will give us confirmation if it's a message from him. And if it's not from him, if it's an attack from the enemy, from evil forces, from dark entities, it's going to come with hesitation and confusion. So he said, pray about it. So I did. I sat there and I said, if this isn't from you, please take it away. I don't want this. I don't want to think negative, hurtful things about people, especially people I really don't know. And so, as I'm in the middle of praying while we're in the middle of this sermon, I feel this energy start swirling around me and starting to just kind of encompass me all the way around. And this was new to me. I didn't really ever have this experience previous to this. And this was something that has stuck with me for well over 20 years. So, I mean, it's something that really stood out to me. It's something that you would remember if you had an encounter with one of these otherworld entities, these angels. So, as I'm praying, I feel a presence to my left and I feel a presence to my right. In my mind's eye, I could see these massive entities. I'm going to call them entities for now, but I'm going to describe what I could see in my mind. So to my right, I could see a giant, for lack of a better word. This male figure was probably 10 to 12 feet tall. He was massive. Um, I remember feeling like air moving as they both like entered my space, one on each side. Almost like somebody had kind of like allowed a breeze to enter the room, but there wasn't anything like that going on. So on my left side, this male entity was, he had gigantic broad shoulders. He had on like gold and silver armor. He had on some sort of like helmet is what it looked like, but I could see his long hair kind of flowing out of it. And his hair was lighter in color, like blondish colored hair. So he energetically spoke to me in my mind and told me that his name was Michael. And I was like, oh boy, okay. So Michael on the left. And then the other entity to my right was still extremely tall. I would say he was just slightly shorter than Michael. And he had much darker features. He had more olive skin. He had darker eyes. His hair was dark and curly. And same thing, he was also dressed in glistening armor that was gold and silver in color. Michael had a sword with him that had fire. It also had like blue, almost looked like lightning coming out of it that I could see. And then Gabriel had a sword, but I didn't notice if his was like glowing or anything, but Michael's definitely stood out. So as I'm sitting there, standing there praying, they're both communicating to me through my thoughts. And so this was really new to me. This wasn't something that I had ever really experienced before. I had communicated through prayers and things like that all my life, trying to speak to God, speak to Jesus, otherworldly entities, angels, things like that. But this was the first time that they had physically appeared next to me and I could feel their presence. So that was very profound for me. So I think after I had encountered both of them, I was a little dumbfounded and it was just kind of like, what is happening? Am I losing my mind? Like, where is all this coming from? It was very kind of unnerving. It really rattled me that day. And so I remember Michael telling me, you're about to get proof. And so I sat there and I was just like, what is happening? What is going on? Proof of what? And they said, you're going to get proof. And then that was it. They were both gone. I couldn't feel their presence after that. So we finish up the sermon. I tell my husband, I said, I swear I was just visited by two archangels. And he looked at me like, are you okay? No, are you like, do you need medical attention? Sort of like, this sounds completely outlandish, completely crazy. And he didn't say that to me, but you could just kind of tell he was very puzzled by what I told him. So we leave the sanctuary. He goes to go get the kids from the nursery. And as I'm standing in the foyer, I see the woman that I originally had that thought that she had cancer. And I kid you not, my jaw hit the floor. The whole "you're about to get proof" was absolutely 100% about to be found out. So as I'm standing there, maybe 5 or 10 feet away, it's not super crowded. I can overhear the conversation. I'm not trying to eavesdrop, but I could hear these women talking. It was the woman originally, I'm going to call her Mary because I can't remember her first name. So these women were talking to Mary. And the other two women, the first one, had gone up to her, gave her a big hug, and she said, "I'm so glad to see you here. How is your chemotherapy going?" Jaw floor. Okay. Why would you be taking chemo if you didn't have cancer? Okay. Most people, that's synonymous. Like, we understand that's typically what it is taken for. So, God will give you confirmation. Okay. Spirit will come in. They were giving me some sort of proof. Okay. That's what Michael was telling me. The proof is coming. So I had to be in that situation in order to realize that I really was tapped in, that I really was connecting with otherworld entities or angels, spirit, God, source, creator, all of those things. So spirit will come and they will give you messages, and you may not understand what it means initially. But if it is from God, if it is from spirit, the spiritual realm, the positive side, it's going to come with confirmation or proof every single time. It may not happen immediately, but they will come in and they will give you proof to back up what they are showing you. That has happened literally every time Spirit has given me any sort of message. They will back it up with proof, with facts that is tangible, that you know you're not crazy. Okay, so that's really important. The other thing is, the enemy will try and play with your mind, your emotions, all of those things for the opposite, okay, to deter you from where you are supposed to be, to get you off your path. And so that brings a lot of hesitation or a lot of confusion. So until you have proof of which side that it is coming from, you need to use discernment. So I always tell people, don't act on anything until you receive that confirmation of where it came from. Okay, that's going to be super important. So that was what the sermon was about that Sunday. How do I remember that all these years later? It stuck out to me because of the events that unfolded that day. So the whole premise behind Spirit's going to show up and give you confirmation, right? I would have never known that that thought that I had was accurate without the proof that came. And the angels came in to facilitate that. I always feel like there was some sort of divine intervention that Sunday to kind of put you in that position in order to with the things that you knew. So that's the first encounter that I had with angels. Archangel Michael has come to me on several occasions. I don't always interact with the other angels, and there are many, many of them. All of them have different abilities, different jobs, different things that they're supposed to do. But Archangel Michael specifically has come a few times. Sometimes I have called him to help me. Sometimes he just shows up. And when he shows up, it's something that is, you can feel the change in the energy, is the best way that I can describe it. It's almost like if let's say you've been in a room by yourself and you're not looking around, and maybe you're focused on something else. Maybe you're on your phone, maybe you're reading a book, doing work, whatever, but you feel that there's a presence that has entered your space. That's typically what happens when Spirit enters in my world, okay? And so I can energetically tell a difference between whether it is a high ranking spirit entity or whether it is just a human that has crossed, that has entered my space. Archangel Michael has come to me in a dream. Um, there has been a dream that I was having. I want to say this was probably 2 or 3 years ago at this point. It's been a hot minute. And in this dream, I remember it was completely dark, and out of the darkness, I could see like little puffs of fire, of flames. And I thought, what in the world is going on? And as the flames started to get closer, all of a sudden, I could see eyes, like bright blue glowing eyes that I could see, and I was a little terrified. And all of a sudden, the light catches his face, and I could see his whole body. I could see his gigantic wings. That's the other thing I forgot to mention in the first one in church. I could see their beautiful wings, pristine, the brightest white I have ever seen in my life, so bright that they glowed. It was almost blinding to look at. That's how bright the light was. And just massive wings. The wings had to have been at least 10 feet long on each side, each one, and it was just magnificent to look at. So, in the dream that I had, I could see Michael's face and then I could see the rest of his body. And he ended up slaying a dragon. What's weird is I didn't know there was a part in the Bible. I want to say it's in the book of Daniel. I'll have to look that up to be 100% sure and quote it for you. But in the dream, he slayed this dragon in front of me. And what's funny is my stepdaughter, many, many years ago when she was in high school, she drew Archangel Michael, and that hangs in my kitchen. It's just a little drawing. It's black and white. There's no color to it or anything, but he's been in my kitchen in the two houses that I've lived since she's been in my life. And so in this dream, as he's slaying the dragon, once he takes its head off, he comes to me and he says, I'm here for protection. If you need assistance, you speak my name and I'll be there in a split second. And I didn't understand exactly why he was coming in to offer protection at that time. I just knew that that's what he had communicated. So in the same dream, I then see a female presence enter. And again, it's completely black in the dream, other than these three entities, the dragon, Michael, and this female entity who came and introduced herself as Lilith. At the time, I didn't know anything about Lilith. She was Adam's first wife in the Bible. It's left out of many of the texts, but in some Jewish texts, she is actually talked about. Now, they paint her in a pretty negative light, so I was a little leery to have anything to do with her. So I started doing my own research. Lilith was refusing to submit to Adam because she was created to be his equal. She was created out of the same dust as him. She was meant to be his equal, not subservient to him. So she had a hard time submitting. She left Eden. Angels tried to bring her back because she refused to become his submissive partner. They basically cast her out of Eden and she was demonized. She was said to be like a succubus, a she devil, and that she murdered women and children, especially pregnant women, and that she like fed on the souls of the innocent. So you can see they paint her in quite a negative light, which is why I was a bit hesitant to get involved. However, in further research, I found that she was really treated very poorly and unfairly because she chose to stand up for what she wanted. And so I feel like she is really a symbol of female empowerment. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people who actually know who she is and realize that she is like this divine mother energy, she also came and offered protection. I felt very safe in her presence, not fearful. She was gorgeous. She had big brown eyes, very long black hair, and she was gorgeous. She was absolutely beautiful and breathtaking. And she said, same thing, she was here to offer protection. I didn't understand at the time, but my gifts would slowly start to amplify, and that I would need protection in both the higher realms as well as the lower realms. So they both came to offer protection. They were working as a team. And so that is one of the other experiences that I've had with Archangel Michael. Many, many years ago, I was going through a crummy divorce. I was currently separated from my then husband, and I was going to pick up the boys for visitation time that it was my time to have with them. I had a really crummy vehicle, and it constantly broke down. So on my way home from picking up my kids, it's the middle of summer, it's hot, it's miserable. I run out of gas, or I think I run out of gas. My van that I had just was not the best thing in the world. And I broke down. I'm panicking. I'm like, shit, what am I going to do? Like, I don't have a way to get home. I don't have a way for help. I didn't really have anybody in the area that could come and help me. A good Samaritan, a woman in a Jeep, pulled up and she offered her assistance. And I told her, I said, it vapor locks sometimes. I think I have gas in it, but I honestly don't know. So she tinkered with some stuff and she said, well, let's try the gas thing. She said, Sam's Club's right there. I have a membership. I'll go get gas. I'll be right back. I was so broke at that point in my life. I didn't even have $5 to put gas in my car. And I told her, I said, "Can I get your address? Can I send it to you in a check or something after the fact?" And she said, "No, no, honey, it's fine. I've been in situations like this before. You'll pay it forward one day. I promise you are going to have that experience where you're going to be put in a position to help somebody else." There's a little more to that story. So I had um I had been talking with my dad. My dad has lived out of state basically my entire life. And there were things to do with Jeeps specifically that were really important to this whole scenario unfolding. I also had a problem with men at that point because I had been nothing but treated unfairly and poorly by all of the men that I had been in relationships with prior to this woman coming to help me. So she came in a Jeep, she came offering help and assistance, and she fixed the problem, and it was a woman in a Jeep. So sometimes angels will come in human form to help us be protected or better off, help offer assistance. That's the best way to put it when we are in a time of need. There's some really good songs that I've listened to for many years. One of them is called Angels Among Us by the group Alabama. And it literally talks about angels are sent down from heaven to assist us in our time of need. They come to you and me in our darkest hour to teach us how to live, to help us with a light of love, I think is the lyrics. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. It's a great song. So, Spirit knows what you need and in the form you need to see it to not be fearful. Okay. And so, I probably wouldn't have taken help from a man at that point in my life. I was very distrusting of men in general. I'm not saying all men are bad. I'm just saying at that time of my life, I didn't want help from a guy. I was sick of guys at that point in my life. I wanted nothing to do with any more guys. I was done with it. So God sent a woman instead. He sent me somebody who was going to help me. She gets the gas, she puts it in, fires my van right up, and we were on our way and we made it back home safely. You take that however you need it. Could it have been a human? Sure, of course it could have been a human. But all the things that were happening in my life, all of them started to align. And I would like to believe that that was an angel in human form sent to help me when I really needed it the most. So that was a second time that that happened. The last one, I'm going to try really, really hard to get through without getting super choked up. I will tell you when I channel spirit, whether it's angels, Jesus, God, source, spirit, whatever you call the higher power, okay, I do tend to get overwhelmed. When the Holy Spirit is present, it encompasses my emotions. And I do. That's how I typically know that I'm in Holy Spirit energy is I just start weeping uncontrollably. I'm not sad. I'm not upset in any way, shape, or form. I just feel the presence, and it is such a beautiful energy. It overwhelms me energetically, and I start weeping. So if that happens, that's what's going on. I just want everybody to know that's watching this. No, she's not sitting here just crying on the internet. The Holy Spirit sometimes just takes over and hijacks my energy. So, the final instance that I want to describe, and there's been other times that angels have visited me, but this one I feel like really sticks out to me because it was the tipping point for my spiritual gifts being awoken and to a point where I could no longer discount them. I could no longer say, oh, it's just a coincidence. Oh, it's whatever. No, it was very cut and dry, very much confirmation for me. So I would say roughly about a month before my mom had passed away, I started having these really crazy dreams or visitations. We'll call it a visitation because I was really not asleep when this happened. So the first time that it happened, I was drifting off to sleep. And you know how sometimes you'll be good and comfortable, and then all of a sudden it's like you jolt awake and it's like, oh gosh, was I falling? What happened? Like you're startled back awake. So this would happen on a nightly basis. I would say this happened for a period of roughly 3 weeks, maybe more, maybe a little less. So every night I'd be starting to drift off to sleep. I'm in a completely dark room. I don't have a TV in my bedroom on purpose because I don't want to watch TV in bed. My cell phone was turned off. There's not really any like backlighting or anything in my bedroom. It's completely dark at night. So I keep it that way on purpose to help me sleep better. So I'm being jolted awake several times by what feels like somebody clicked on a bright floodlight. And if you've ever seen like those halogen lamps, that are extremely bright, or like the brand new headlights on cars that are almost blinding, they're so bright. That is exactly what I kept opening my eyes because it felt like somebody turned a bright spotlight on my eyes while I had them closed and I could see the light. It was blinding white. Um, it didn't feel hot. It felt very comforting. It felt very peaceful. But this light, as soon as I opened my eyes, the room is black. There's no light in there whatsoever. So I sit there for a second like, what in the world just happened? I know there was a light turned on. Where is the light? And so this happened multiple times in several weeks. And I didn't understand for a very long time what exactly that was until much later. Kept happening, kept happening. So I started journaling about it. I documented it. It's in my book, Stepping Stones to Destiny. If you're curious, link in the description box. You can purchase your own copy. So several weeks go by, and I keep having these same awakenings as I'm trying to sleep, where it feels like a floodlight keeps flashing in my eyes. So I start doing some research because at this point I'm getting a little bit concerned. It's like, is there something going on internally? We always hear about how when people get ready to pass over that they see the bright white light or the tunnel and things like that. And so I thought, gosh, is my time coming? Am I going to pass away soon? Because this isn't normal. I've never heard of other people having any sort of, experience like this for any unknown reason. So I start doing some research trying to figure out, is it, am I having issues internally in like my brain? Is there something going on? Had CAT scans, had MRIs. Yes, they found some issues, but they're related to migraines. So no, there wasn't anything medically that was causing it. Had my heart checked out. No, nothing medically going on there either. Okay, so what is this? So I started looking up things to do with spirituality, started looking up things to do with angels or otherworldly entities. And what I came across was that since angels vibrate at such a immensely high frequency, they come through as pure white light. Sometimes they come through as like golden light, or they might have a little bit of golden hue to the white light, but typically they are seen as immensely bright white light, which is exactly what I was seeing. Fast forward the 3 weeks or so, I have a dream about my mom passing away in very great detail. In this dream, I could see what looked like an illuminated tunnel. And if you've ever seen like a football game and how the players come out of the locker room, you see like this hallway that's got lights in it, and all these people start coming out. But there's usually people staggered in the background. And so in this dream, I could see my boyfriend's parents who were passed away. I didn't know either of them while they were alive. I see both of them. I see Jimmy and Marcy. I see my sister-in-law, Danon, that had passed away several years before. I see friends of mine that had passed away. I see other family members like my grandparents, and they're all smiling. They're so happy. They're so excited to see everybody. And they're like, we're ready for the party. And I didn't understand what I was being seen, what I was being shown. So I have that dream, and then I have a dream where I see my mom. Um, she looked like she had fallen in the dream. So that part was a key part in what actually unfolded. But in the dream that she passed away, I remember waking up in a panic and calling her as soon as I woke up. I just was like, I have to call my mom. And so I call, she answers, and I was so relieved. And I said, I had the worst nightmare that you died and that nobody found you for weeks, that we had to find out through the grapevine, through police and through, other people in your building. And I said, I'm just so glad you're okay. I said, are you sure you're okay? Like, do you need to go to the doctor? Do you need anything? Can I help with anything? And she laughed at me and she said, I'm fine. and, and I don't want you to worry when it's my time to go. I know where I'm going and I'm not afraid to die. I needed to hear those words because I was not prepared for what was going to happen next. So, roughly a month later, I'm at a doctor's appointment with one of my children, and I get a random text message from my oldest niece, who we don't talk very often. And she said, Auntie, have you heard from Grandma? And I was like, no, not in like a week or so. And I said, what's going on? And she said, well, one of the people in Grandma's building called to offer condolences to us for her passing. And I about stopped dead in my tracks and I said, that's concerning. Let me make some phone calls. Don't panic, and I will call you right back as soon as I have an answer. So, first thing I do is I pick up the phone, I start trying to get a hold of my mom. No answer. I text her several times, no answer. She used to be on Facebook all the time, so I Facebook messaged her, no answer. Called her phone again, left voicemails, no answer. Finally, I was like, okay, maybe she's outside. Maybe she's, out with friends or whatever, and she left her phone at home. That wasn't super uncommon. So I decided, okay, I'm going to call the office. I'm going to call the building and I'm going to see if they can go do a welfare check. This was in the height of COVID. She passed away in June of 2020. We could not get in her building unless we lived there or we were personnel that worked in the building or we were medical staff. Those were the only people that were allowed in her building at that time. So I knew I couldn't get in without help. So I get a hold of somebody at the office and I explain to him the situation. We've been notified by somebody that she may have passed away. Um, we don't have a way to get in there. I'm an hour and a half drive away. Can somebody please go verify if she's okay and let me know what's going on? And they said, yes, we'll go do that. We'll call you back with an answer. We wrap up at the doctor's office. I call my boyfriend and I said, I have the worst feeling in the world that something has happened to my mom. I've got a phone call in. We're wrapping up at the doctor. I'm on my way home, but I'm going to call the police if I haven't heard from them here in the next few minutes. Get all the way home. Um, Still hadn't heard from her office. So I was like, fuck it. I'm calling the cops. I got to know. I can't sit here in limbo. I can't sit here and wonder. So I called the police department, explained the situation, told them she lives alone. She's had 2 previous strokes. We can't get in the building. I'm an hour and a half drive away. Can somebody please go do a welfare check on her? We have heard that she may have passed away from other people that live in her building, have notified other family members. They said, yes, we will definitely call you back. We'll head over there right now. About maybe 20, 30 minutes goes by, and I just had this sinking feeling in my stomach. I was like, she's gone. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I know without a doubt in my mind, she's gone. And the phone rings, and I answer it. And the police advocate woman's name was Marcy. That was John's mom's name, who I'd never met. So right away, I was like, that's odd. And she was very calm. She was extremely professional. I really don't remember much of that conversation because when you're getting some of the worst news of your life that's traumatic, it's difficult to remember everything that they're telling you. But the parts that I do remember was that she told me, we made contact with your mother's unit. When we entered the unit, we heard water running. We went into the bathroom and we found your mother deceased in the tub. She did not drown. She was not submerged, although water was running. I guess the drain had been open and that she had been there for some time, at least several days. And she said, is there anyone there with you? And I said, yes, I have family here with me. And she said, do you have siblings or anybody else you'd like me to contact? I said, yes, I have one sister. I didn't want to be the one to make that phone call. I couldn't stomach doing that. And so she called and spoke to my sister and let her know. But I had to call everybody else in the family, my mom's siblings and, my dad and all of that. So what was crazy was that the angels were coming to prepare me for one of the worst experiences of my life. And that kind of opened the door for all of my spiritual gifts amplifying. I could no longer deny that I was psychic at that point. I had a very vivid dream weeks before that I saw these things unfold in great detail. I knew that I wasn't crazy. I knew that these things were happening. I'd had many prophetic dreams in my lifetime. A lot of them had actually happened over the years. So I kept a dream log, and that's kind of how my book came about, was all of these things. It's like it was cathartic for me to be able to actually address some of these things that had happened, some of these things that I didn't know if they would happen. Some of them I hoped they really wouldn't ever happen. But my mom, losing her in the way that I did, was the catalyst or the door opening for all of these gifts. My mom was very spiritual. She was a little more religious than me, but she was really a spiritual person. She talked to God regularly. She fully believed in angels. I would say she probably believed in the afterlife or heaven, things like that, but maybe not reincarnation. Sometimes I think she did, and sometimes I think she didn't. But what was crazy is the illuminated hallway part of the dream, where I could see all these people that I know um, from in my life that have passed on, that are on the other side. I call them the welcoming committee. And we all have some of those. It's our ancestors and friends and family that are already on the other side. And the reason they were so excited is they were getting ready to welcome her in to heaven. So they all had smiles on their face. They're all excited. And then I had another dream that I was shown that John's parents, Jimmy and Marcy, who were the first ones I saw in the tunnel, were actually there to help her transition out of her body into spirit. And so that was a comforting thing for me because she passed alone. And so, what the angels want us to know is that nobody ever leaves alone. Even if they pass physically alone, Spirit is there to help assist with the transition, especially if it's traumatic, especially if they've been ill for a long time. Sometimes you'll hear people, and I personally have known several people that when it comes time for them to leave their physical body and go into the spiritual, it's like all of a sudden there's this zest again in them. There's this light within them again. Some of them have said, I can see Jesus, I can see God, I can see heaven, I see angels in the room, because it's real. We're seeing these things because the veil is the thinnest when we get ready to transition. So what they showed me is that even though my mom passed by herself, she wasn't alone. They were there waiting for her time to collect her, to bring her to the other side. And so what they showed me was that John's dad actually physically grabbed her hand and pulled her from her vessel into the spiritual. And so I call them the welcoming committee, because they were extremely excited to welcome her into heaven. So I would be curious what experiences you all have had with angels, visitations, dreams, any sort of spot in your life that you can remember that you feel like angels have come to assist you, because they are here to assist us. We're here with free will, so we always have a choice to connect or not. I would say it's always better if you do. So we're going to discuss some of the different types of angels and kind of what they are. So what is an angel? In religious context, an angel is typically understood to be a spiritual being, often conceived as a messenger of God or a divine being with specific roles and functions. They are often described as having no physical form, but sometimes appearing in human form or other forms. In some traditions, angels are seen as intermediaries between the divine and the human realms. So we all kind of have seen maybe, human depictions or artistic depictions of what we think angels look like, right? They look pretty human for the most part with giant wings. And so I think most of us are synonymous, or we understand that that's one of the forms that they can take. But there's many forms that they can take, and not all of them exist in our human understanding. If we look at the biblical teachings or the biblical descriptions of what angels look like, most of them don't look anything like humans. Some of them look like a wheel spinning with eyeballs all over it with wings. Some of them look like the little, what do they call it? Like Cupid, the little chubby baby that's naked with wings, things like that. So there's many different forms that we have come to understand exist. So in the context of this podcast, we're going to cover 9 different forms. I found some research on those. So we're going to cover some of what those look like and what they are and what they do. So we know that angels are very spiritual. They're spiritual entities, spiritual beings. So angels are generally considered to be non-physical spirit beings, though they may sometimes appear in a physical form. So maybe we don't always interact with them looking like human. Maybe they come to us as a bright white light, offering some sort of spiritual or energetic protection. They are messengers of God. A common role attributed, there we go, that's the right word, to angels is to serve as messengers, conveying divine messages or commands. What was my first experience? They were giving me messages. They were showing me that I could see things that I wouldn't otherwise know. So they were conveying messages. So they are here to give messages to people. Created beings. In many religions, angels are believed to be created by God, not external or eternal beings like God. So, in most religions, they're believed to be created by God, that they are not external beings or eternal beings like God. There is a hierarchy in angels. So, uh, what's weird is what comes to mind is like in the military, there's different rankings. Okay, so a different hierarchy. Like you have generals and commanders and captains and things like that, lieutenants, all of that stuff, right? There's a hierarchy or a ranking system. So some traditions like Catholicism describe a hierarchical structure among angels with different ranks and responsibilities. So we're going to get a little bit more into that as we go. Did you know that there's also good and evil when it comes to angels? While generally associated with goodness and light, some traditions also acknowledge fallen or evil angels. Now, I'm not going to get into it in this podcast, but if you guys are curious, maybe we'll do a second one about the darker side of angels, like the Nephilim, the fallen angels, and things like that. So, in the book of Enoch, that was removed from most Bibles that we know today, it did discuss the great floods. It did discuss the fallen angels coming and mating with humans and creating the Nephilim, the giants, the angels that were destroyed by God because they were considered to be an abomination. It was not something that was meant to happen. Angels were not supposed to mate with humans, yada, yada, down the road. So we'll get into that in another podcast if you guys want me to. So there are specific roles and types of angels. We have guardian angels. Yes, you have one. We all have guardian angels. They walk with us every day from birth to death through our life, and they are here to help us and assist us. So in some beliefs, individuals have a specific angel assigned to them for protection and guidance. You can ask your guide, your angel, to help you with literally anything. That's what they're there to do. Archangels. Okay, we've met some of those as well. Certain angels like Michael and Gabriel, the 2 that I've met, are often identified as archangels, holding high positions and significant roles. Angels of various functions. There are angels associated with diverse functions, including worship, protection, announcement, carrying out divine will, and more. Lucifer, the light bearer is what his name means, was originally he was the angel of worship. The problem is that instead of the praise and the worship going to God, creator source, Lucifer wanted all of that clout to understand it as to why he was cast out of heaven was because he tried to get all of that praise and worship that he was creating with the angels and the music for God. He wanted it for himself. So there could be some issues with some of those things as well. So they all have different functions, they all have different jobs, and there are many of them. So, angels are talked about in many different world religions. And so, a couple of them that have very similar but not exact beliefs. What is happening to my computer? Don't you love it when tech issues just create a problem? So, that last part got a little bit cut off. So, there are several world religions that believe in angels. So, we have a couple that we're going to talk about here. So, in Judaism, angels are prominent figures in the Hebrew Bible, often depicted as messengers or agents of God. In Christianity, angels are also central to Christian belief, with various depictions in the Bible and theological discussions about their roles and nature. In Islam, angels are considered part of the unseen world, and belief in them is one of the 6 pillars of faith, with specific duties assigned to them. In Hinduism, Hindu traditions include celestial gods and beings with roles similar to angels, often depicted as beautiful or handsome figures. So I would say that it's probably safe to say that most people on this planet have at least heard of angels, maybe know of what an angel is, believe in them, or even have had an encounter with one at some point in their life. So, what is an angel? An angel is a spiritual being considered to be a messenger or servant of God in various religions, traditions, and cultures. Angels are believed to possess divine powers and act as guides, protectors, and mediators between the earthly and the divine. So they're the intermediary or the medium between the worlds. They often are depicted as celestial beings with wings. They convey a sense of purity and benevolence, and in different beliefs, angels may fulfill various roles, such as offering comfort, carrying out divine tasks, or protecting people in times of need. Their presence symbolizes hope, kindness, and spiritual care. So, have you had any encounters with angels? Is that something that you believe in? Do you believe that angels are real? I definitely believe angels are real. So, what is the Bible's definition of an angel? In the Bible, an angel is primarily understood to be a messenger of God, a spiritual being created by God to serve him and to carry out his will. They are not deities themselves, but rather intermediaries between the divine and the human realm. Angel itself comes from the Greek word ag- agilos, meaning messenger. So most of our language comes from like Greek or Latin, right? So we go back to the original context. And I believe the original Bibles would have been written in Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, and maybe one other language that I can't think of right off the top of my head. So winged messengers is what comes to mind right now as I'm discussing this. So I feel like there would have been some sort of context for that, right? There's stories in the Bible where um, there's several accounts of people, humans, interacting with angels in some way, shape, or form. Mary was visited by an angel for the inception of Jesus before she was pregnant with him. There's Eli, I want to say it's Eli, that maybe I have the name wrong, but anyway, he wrestled with an angel all night, like a physical, spiritual battle with an angel, right? Um, there was angels at the tomb that Mary Magdalene would have been the first person that they encountered to tell her that Jesus had rose again. So there's various accounts throughout the context of the Bible that discusses angel visitation. So we know that it's something that has been around for literally ever, and it's something that we encounter today in times. These otherworld winged creature entities are very much a part of our 3D reality at times as well. So, angels are messengers of God. They're usually depicted delivering messages, announcements, or instructions from God to humans. So, they interact with human beings on quite a regular basis. That's part of their job. Examples include the angel Gabriel announcing the birth of Jesus to Mary. That's the one I was talking about. The angel announcing Jesus's resurrection to the woman at the tomb, Mary Magdalene. They also play a role in delivering divine judgments and warnings, right? Warnings are a big one that I feel like they come through with. Heavenly beings. Angels are described as spiritual beings with unique characteristics and abilities, often exceeding human capabilities. While they are generally invisible to humans, they can manifest in visible forms, sometimes appearing as radiant beings or with physical attributes. Angels are also not bound by physical limitations and can move with incredible speed. Almost like you blink and there they are. They can travel gazillions of miles in split seconds. In my experience, when I've called on Archangel Michael for help, protection, or assistance, literally it's almost as if you blink and then he's there. It's very strange the first few times to have that happen, but that's part of his role of protector and guardian, is to be able to be at your side in a moment's notice. There are several types of angels. The Bible mentions different types of angels, including the cherubim and the seraphim, often associated with God's presence and worship. Archangels like Michael and Gabriel are also identified with specific roles and responsibilities. So let's talk about the different types of angels. So the Bible mentions different types of angels, including cherubim and seraphim, associated with God's presence and worship. Archangels like Michael and Gabriel. And let's see, some angels are associated with specific roles as protection or protecting individuals or guiding nations. Now, I can't remember exactly where, but it talks about a legion of angels, like an army of angels, right? And so, if you know anything about spiritual warfare, they're battling almost all of the time, right? In the other spiritual realms, there's, let's just say it's like an army, okay? You have captains and commanders and lieutenants and, all these things, right? And their jobs might be completely different than the angels that we might interact with here on earth, or archangels, right? So they've got many different roles, many different jobs and functions that they do on the other side. They are ministering spirits. Angels are described as ministering spirits serving God and assisting those who are heirs of salvation. They are involved in various aspects of God's work, including protection, believers, delivering messages, and assisting in divine judgments. It's also important to note that angels are created beings. So, angels are not eternal beings like God. They were created before the physical world and were present at its creation. Some angels, however, rebelled against God and became fallen angels, or also called demons. Not objects of worship. Angels are not to be worshiped or revered as deities. They are servants of God and should be honored as such, but worship is reserved for God alone. All right, so we're going to discuss the 9 different types that are the most common. Now, there might be others. These were the ones that we are probably the most familiar with. So we're going to discuss those 9. So the first one in the first triad is they contemplate and adore God directly. There we go. Don't know why that was such a tongue twister. Number 1 is the seraphim. The name means the burning ones, and they are attendants at the throne of God. They praise God singing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." There are some pictures that I'm going to try and attach at the end of the podcast for you guys to see what they actually look like. Number 2 is the cherubim. The name means the fullness of wisdom, and they contemplate God's providence assigned to protect special places. The thrones represent the steadfastness of the love of God. They contemplate God's power and judgment, and they appear as the most unlike the others when revealed. Interesting. In the second triad, we have the, let's see, dominions, virtues, and powers. These fulfill God's plan in the universe. So the dominions are the Lord over the lower choirs and humanity. They take illumination from the higher hierarchies and govern the universe. The virtues run the operation of movement in the universe. They are often associated with planets, elements, passions and nature, seasons and nature, and then powers. The powers assist in governing the natural order. They are warrior angels tasked with fighting the war against the demonic choirs. So the second triad is going to be ones that are like the soldiers. Some of them are kind of like soldiers, right? Because they're battling the forces of evil and darkness to keep humanity safe from all of these things that could come against us. And then we have the third triad. So we have principalities, archangels, and angels. The third triad interact and serve humanity closely. So these would be ones that we would more than likely have some interaction with in our lifetime. The principalities, let's see, princes of the lowest triad assigned to care and guard communities, kingdoms, states, and parishes. They are associated with transition in power. The archangels, leader angels assigned to communicate and carry out God's important plans for man. Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael are the only three names that we know. So there's technically three archangels that we're aware of. Maybe there's more, but we don't necessarily know what they are called. So Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. And then we have angels. Angels are the closest to the material world and humanity. The lowest choir is where we get the majority of our personal guardian angels. So there's several of them. Again, legions of armies of angels exist beyond where we can even comprehend. So they all have certain jobs that they're set up to do. They are created by God for specific purposes. And so you may have never encountered some of these, but you probably have encountered your guardian angel or potentially an archangel at some point in your life, or maybe you will. All right, so I want to attempt to show you guys some of these pictures. So if we look, this would be a seraphim. So a winged creature with a giant eyeball. I've seen other depictions where the eyes are kind of all over the wings as well. So winged creatures with eyes, kind of all-seeing sort of entity. So the seraphim was part of the first triad. We have the cherubim. So this one, I feel like sometimes we see depicted as like Cupid or the little chubby baby with wings, things like that. This one looks like it's got, let's see, we have a lion, an eagle, and a bull with an angel. So those are depicted in there. The thrones look like a wheel with eyes everywhere, and it's usually seen spinning in multiple directions. So each one of these wheels or circles on here would spin in a direction, and the eyeballs would move along with it. So there's parts of the Bible that I remember hearing stories and reading different parts where an angel appears and they say something to the effect of, "Be not afraid, I come in peace," sort of deal. Because you probably would kind of shit yourself if you saw those in their traditional form, their natural form, right? So they cloak themselves to look less scary to us a lot of times so that we're not fearful of their presence. So a lot of times I feel like they also come in just light energy. We have the dominions here, so kind of humanish, not totally human, but definitely with wings there. This is the second triad. We have the powers. So they all look very different. If you start to notice, they look very, very different. The virtues. Okay, and then our third triad, we have principalities, archangels, and regular angels or guardian angels. And I feel like the guardian angels look the most human-esque compared to all of the other ones, along with archangels. So out of all 9 of those, I feel like the most human-esque would be our guardian angels, things that can come to us in more of a human form. So I'm also going to grab you the drawing that my stepdaughter did so you can see what she drew. Now, this was drawn several years ago by one of my stepkids, and she really was big into art and things like that. Several years later, she joined the military and she actually got her drawing tattooed on her thigh. And in her drawing on her tattoo, Michael is actually slaying a beast, slaying a demon, slaying a dragon, something to that effect. So, this is her drawing of Archangel Michael. And you can see, like, he has a very human face. He had long hair, just like I saw him. He's got his flaming sword in his hand, and he's got his shield there. But this was her drawing of Michael. It's hung in my house for many, many years, and she actually had one very similar to this. I think she tweaked it just a little bit, tattooed on her later in life. So we talked about angel visitations. So that's something that tends to happen to people. Again, in your time of need, when you really need, confirmation or protection, things like that, guidance, wisdom, messages, spirit will deliver. So angelic visitation, according to many, are divine encounters where angels appear to individuals, often to deliver messages, provide guidance, or offer protection. These visitations can be manifested in various ways, including visions, dreams, or even physical encounters. While some may perceive these experiences as frightening due to the angel's power, others see them as a comforting presence. So, angels are definitely divine messengers. They are portrayed as messengers of God, conveying instructions, warnings, or promises. There are supernatural encounters that many believe are angels can appear physically, interacting with individuals in the same way as any other person. There is a lot of fear and awe when they tend to, it might intimidate people. So, due to that, their power and their radiant glory, but they are often coming through saying things like fear not or do not be afraid. Again, especially in situations where they're in their actual angelic form as opposed to cloaking in a human form, it would definitely be jarring to see something like that ill prepared, right? And so I can only imagine if one revealed its true nature, we wouldn't necessarily know what to do. It would be very shocking, very jarring. So they typically will come through saying, "Don't be afraid, we're here in peace, we're here not to harm you." So, symbolism and dreams. Angels can appear in dreams, sometimes conveying symbolic messages or guidance. I have encountered them in multiple dreams in my life, always giving some sort of comfort or guidance. So there's also spiritual significance. So those with faith in Jesus are believed to be more receptive to angelic visitations, as angels are considered ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation. Biblical examples. The Bible contains numerous accounts of angelic visitations, including those to Mary, Zachariah, and others. There's also personal interpretations. Experiences with angels vary from person to person, and not everyone may have the same type of encounter, so it varies from person to person. Not to be worshipped. While angels are powerful and important, the Bible makes it clear that they are not to be worshipped according to the article. Angels are believed to be sent by God to serve and assist those on their spiritual journey, which is what we're all here to do, learn and grow. And there could be some possible signs. Some believe that signs like a sudden sense of peace, a feeling of being watched, or peripheral vision experiences could indicate an angelic presence, according to one article. So, again, my very first experience with angels was kind of like I could feel them in my peripherals. Like if I sat still, and did that, I knew there was something on each side of me and I could physically see them in my mind. I could describe them in detail. Still, 20 some odd years later, I remember exactly what I saw. I can't tell you what I did yesterday, but I remember that very distinctly. And I remember the other encounters that I also had. So they're going to leave their mark. If they come and interact with you, it's something that will be memorable. You will not have a lot of confusion with this. It's going to be very clear. That's part of their purpose. Their job is to communicate with us, to give us guidance, to give us messages, and to hopefully help shed some light on things that we question or things that we're struggling with in our time of need. That's when they come to us. They can come to us at any time. We simply have to ask for assistance. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode all about angels. I hope that if you've had some experiences that they've been positive experiences with angels or otherworld entities, I would love to hear about it. If you guys have had experiences with any type of angel, feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to shoot me an email. Maybe it'll be featured in a future episode of the podcast. As always, if you have any sort of topic that you want discussed on here, shoot me an email. Let me know. If you want to be a guest on here, let me know if you'd like to participate. As always, have a safe and wonderful week. We'll see you next time.